CARE's 2021 mid-year report tries to make the case for the creation of an Islamophobia envoy. As can be seen here, Ilhan Omar wants the envoy to have the force of law.
I will also be introducing legislation that gives this envoy the force of law.
So let's look at CARE's evidence of the rise in Islamophobia that warrants the creation of a special envoy. Let us know in the comments section if you think CARE has made a case for the need of an anti-Islamophobia envoy. On January 4th, a tweet from Lori Maslow caught CARE's eye. CARE claims she said Palestinians will be wiped off the face of the earth. She has apologized, taken down the tweet, resigned her position, and has agreed to take sensitivity courses. Why is this in CARE's report? Isn't this evidence that we don't need an envoy? Because this appears to be handled.
A teacher at the prestigious LaGuardia High School in Manhattan harassed a student who is Muslim, calling her a terrorist.
He was like, "Oh, I thought you were practicing how to pick locks." And I said, "I don't need to practice that, because why would I practice that?" And he said, "Because you're a terrorist." Every time I walked into that classroom, I just felt ashamed of myself and my religion and my identity.
Will the envoy encourage her not to indulge in self-pity like this? It's also worth noting that CARE has also objected to a dance routine at LaGuardia High.
Ahmed Mohammed is the legal director at the civil rights organization CARE.
We want a fair and impartial investigation into the incident. This is an Islamophobic incident. We want the Department of Education to take it seriously.
This can't be the kind of thing that the envoy would become involved in. We know CARE wants to be taken seriously. If only they gave us more reason to do that.
An Alabama man, his truck was parked near the Capitol. Illegally, they found several guns, 11 homemade ammunition, 11 homemade bombs. You were named in a handwritten note, according to the indictment. And next to your name, the note says, quote, "one of two Muslims in the House of Representatives."
I receive death threats all the time, Aaron, as well as Ilhan and Rashida.
His name is in the letter, but that's about it. While being promised evidence of the need for a special envoy, we are somehow left expecting more.
A political scientist and author from Watertown is accused of secretly working for the Iranian government while here in Massachusetts. The FBI says Kaveh Afrasiabi was paid to lobby U.S. officials, including a congressman, to advance ideas that benefited Iran. A statement from the FBI special agent in charge reads in part, "His arrest makes it clear that the U.S. is not going to allow undeclared agents of Iran to operate in our country unchecked."
A threatening letter was sent to the Islamic Center of Hawthorne in California. The letter ended with, "Your religious services and rituals to praising silly Muhammad is inconceivable and intolerable to me." It doesn't take an envoy to tell you that this was a hoax.
Now, a 35-year-old Albany man arrested and charged for weapons and for menacing with these guns after allegedly threatening people at two stores Tuesday night simply because they're Muslim.
35-year-old James Davis was arrested and charged after allegedly making racist threats to employees at two separate corner stores. Police believe this could be the weapon used during the incidents. Davis also goes by Minette Utep El Day. We've covered stories with him at local Black Lives Matter protests.
Right now, it doesn't rise to the level of a hate crime.
We're not U.S. citizens. We're the American. We're the Moorish Americans.
Is the envoy going to do anything about the Moorish Americans?
The man is facing bias crime charges after police say he went on a rampage inside a Southeast Portland gas station. Video shows him throwing items at the clerk, shouting anti-Muslim slurs.
We do things in America, Afghan, Al-Qaeda, Osama. Huh? Is it? You scared to film me? I'll grab that camera out of your hand, dude.
A gas station cashier in Southeast Portland grabbed his cell phone Friday night to record what was unfolding in front of him.
Let's call this the barter system. $5. You can owe me. You can owe me. You call the cops. I'm an easy man to find.
That cashier quickly called 911.
Someone hit me and I got
with the JoJo?
Yeah, he took. Okay, he destroyed the store. He destroyed the store. Where is cop? Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my!
It's not just the person that attacked them, but why were they empowered? Why do people think this way? And it's because they feel like they can get away with it.
Well, the envoy will take care of that. A Middle Eastern man in his 50s was berated and hit with a laptop by a woman in Palo Alto, California. Don't expect to see a lot of stories about people hitting Muslims with a laptop in Palo Alto. This unusual story is not an example of a need for an envoy.
Good evening. FBI agents are issuing a stern warning after a former resident accused of terrorism made his first appearance in the federal court in Gainesville this afternoon.
Mohammed Suleiman faced a judge for the first time after his arrest on Friday. TV20's Dylan Lyons explains what he was accused in court of doing.
Mohammed Suleiman remains in custody as prosecutors with the U.S. Attorney's Office expressed concerns during his first appearance that he is a flight risk and danger to the community. The former University of Florida student is being charged with one count of attempting to provide material support or resources to a foreign terrorist organization. According to court documents, he was trying to provide support or resources to ISIS from February 2009 through June of 2014. They say he traveled to areas of conflict during that time. A special agent with the FBI office in Jacksonville says they are committed to protecting the national security of the country.
FBI Jacksonville's investigation into Mohammed Fathi Suleiman illustrates our steadfast commitment to protecting Americans from threats posed by violent terrorist organizations and those who attempt to provide them with material support.
Suleiman, who was shuttled into and out of court in this unmarked van, was arrested on June 14, 2014 for illegally crossing into Syria from Turkey. When questioned, said he traveled to Syria to see how life and war were there in the country. Suleiman told Judge Gary Jones that his family is attempting to hire a private attorney, but for the meantime, he will have a federal public defender. His next appearance here at the federal court will be on Monday, February 8th. It'll be a preliminary hearing as well as a detention hearing. He'll also be required to tell the judge if he has hired his own private attorney. Reporting in Gainesville, Dylan Lyons, TV 20 News.
A death threat made against the Florida chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations.
The FBI will not confirm nor deny that they've launched an investigation, but that is standard. Ruiz tells us that he has noticed an uptick in inflammatory and threatening language.
After Joe Kaufman wrote an article documenting Wilfredo Ruiz's anti-Semitic statements, Ruiz used a random internet comment to distract from the contents of the article. Unless the proposed envoy is going to address CARE's excesses, then the creation of such an agency will only hurt the country.
East Bay, Oakland's newly minted police chief announced the arrest of a suspect in that brazen assault against a 91-year-old man in Chinatown. Ground Force Marine Kelly reports a man has been arrested and is a felon with a history of violence who is also being charged in 2 other assaults of elderly Asian victims.
The attack is equally sickening as it is cowardly. The 91-year-old victim pushed from behind, sending him crashing to the concrete. Today, at a news conference that was originally intended to publicize a $30,000 reward being offered in the case, Oakland's brand new police chief was able to tell the media and Chinatown residents that the case is closed. Here's the mugshot of the suspect, 28-year-old Yahya Muslim, who's been charged in the assaults of a total of 3 elderly victims in Chinatown. Chief Armstrong also said he's beefing up resources here ahead of the Lunar New Year next weekend.
We're sending a message to those that commit crime in this city that we will pursue you and we will arrest you. It is not acceptable for things like this to happen in our community.
The increase in violent crime in this community, some of them caught on tape recently, has also prompted Alameda County DA Nancy O'Malley to announce the formation of a special response unit to address crimes against Asian individuals, especially those who are elderly.
Part of what has fueled a lot of this crime against Asians, not just here in Oakland, but across the county that we've seen, is based on the rhetoric that we were hearing, particularly in link to the coronavirus, to COVID, to still calling it the Chinese virus and things like that. That fuels hate and it fuels aggression.
It was the shocking videos making headlines that prompted some prominent Asian American actors to raise the $30,000 for the reward, including Daniel Wu, who has family ties to Oakland's Chinatown.
We're angry and we had enough, and this is enough, and we need to get together as a community, but also ask members of the outside community to help us in this fight and help us with this crisis. We're under attack and we need help.
In addition to the 3 assault charges, Yahya Muslim also faces charges of inflicting great bodily injury and committing a crime against an elderly person. An investigator from the district attorney's office is now looking into the case, so it's possible hate crime charges could come at a later date if warranted. Meanwhile, the 91-year-old victim is still in the hospital. Maureen Kelly, KRON 4 News.
A school district in Texas implemented an educational curriculum that included anti-Palestinian rhetoric. I leave it to the viewer's imagination as to what the envoy would do with this.
As soon as she put in your middle name, lots of times, sir.
Why? Because Muhammad, my middle name? What's wrong with my middle name?
Sir?
What's wrong with my middle name?
There's nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong. But there's lots of people that someone with your name might be on a no-fly list.
Very annoying. And just another example of how since Muslims began hijacking planes and flying them into buildings and trying to blow them up, everybody is suffering. In New Jersey, a school board member posted offensive cartoons to Facebook. And even though he apologized, CARE still includes it in their report. A woman of Somali origin was reportedly forced by deputies to remove her religious headscarf while in custody. This is another example of something that is being handled. Authorities are cooperating with CARE. There's no need for an envoy. This is one of several incidents in CARE's report that features Ilhan Omar. Forming an envoy position because Ilhan Omar is getting criticism is a terrible idea.
Agents in California have now been identified on a terrorism watch list. The first man was detained near the Calexico port of entry back in January. Agents found a cell phone SIM card hidden under the insole of the 33-year-old shoe. The second man, a 26-year-old, also tried to illegally enter the same area last week. Both men are undocumented Yemeni nationals, are now
In Knoxville, a man has been arrested for allegedly attempting to provide support and resources to ISIS. 31-year-old Benjamin Carpenter was arrested back in March. Documents filed in federal court say Carpenter was in contact with someone he believed was associated with ISIS. However, it was actually an undercover FBI agent. He allegedly provided translations of ISIS media content. Carpenter faces up to 20 years in prison.
This is a story that has no details like who, what, where, when, why, or how. This is not evidence of a need for an envoy.
That's good enough.
Liar.
One more.
A civil rights group is calling for justice after learning about verbal and physical attacks on a Muslim family in Anne Arundel County. The Maryland office of the Council on American Islamic Relations shared this video with us and says the most recent attack happened on November 6th. A family member was leaving their home when a neighbor approached him and verbally and physically assaulted him. The man's hand was cut with an object and his knee was hurt as well. The families told CARE about a pattern of harassment and abuse by their neighbor, and they say it started back in 2017.
They have limited their movements. They're not sleeping well at night. It's just a really kind of a tense situation for them. And the fact that this is a neighbor and somebody who they have to see and encounter pretty much every day.
This is a truly terrible story in which CARE contributes nothing and makes a fool of themselves.
Last month, 21-year-old Nafia Ikram was ambushed in her Elmont driveway. Someone ran after her and threw a cup of acid at her, burning her face, one of her eyes, throat, and arms.
Nafia is a Pakistani-American Muslim.
That has to raise a specter, an inference, and an investigation has to be conducted.
But the family's not convinced.
The reason I think is not hate crime, why they did not throw on my wife.
If this was a hate crime, we're both the same religion and same culture. Why didn't the person throw the acid on both of us?
I think that in 2021, such attacks like this would not happen. We live in New York. This is something that you hear about in foreign land.
It is too soon to call this a hate crime, since police have not even arrested anyone yet.
Turn now to that subway bomber. Akayed Ullah was sentenced to life in prison today for trying to blow himself up during a hectic morning rush hour in the heart of New York City.
An immigrant from Bangladesh, he became an ISIS sympathizer, but no evidence he ever had direct communication with the terrorist network.
The judge called this a truly barbaric and heinous crime, and it could have been so much worse. NJ Burkett is live in Lower Manhattan with the story. NJ.
Right, Liz, no, he was not an ISIS operative. He was, as Bill said, an ISIS sympathizer and a would-be suicide bomber. But fortunately, not a very good one, because this could have been a bloodbath underground.
Before the pandemic, the subway corridor beneath the Port Authority bus terminal was among the busiest in New York. This is what it looked like at 7:20 in the morning in December of 2017, when the man in the gray hat tried to blow himself up. But the bomb misfires, leaving the suspect badly burned but alive. Scores of people are terrorized. One man will lose his leg and another will lose 70% of his hearing. Akayed Ullah was 27 years old at the time, a Muslim immigrant from Bangladesh, and would later tell investigators that he wanted to kill New Yorkers in the name of ISIS. He was convicted at trial and sentenced today. This was a premeditated, carefully planned attack, said Assistant U.S. Attorney Rebecca Donaleski. He harmed innocent New Yorkers who struggle with the effects of the attack to this day. His public defender pleaded for leniency. He already is reformed, said Attorney Amy Gallicchio. He is deeply remorseful. His actions are abhorrent, but they do not deserve a life sentence. She insisted that Ullah acted out of severe depression. Today, he expressed remorse publicly for the first time. I can tell you from the bottom of my heart, I am deeply sorry for what I did, he told the judge. I apologize to NYC and to law enforcement and to this country. But Justice Richard Sullivan said he was determined to send a message. You strapped a bomb to your person, he said. You got on the subway and you went to the most crowded subway station at the most crowded time of day. It seems to me that a life sentence is appropriate. In the end, it was a crude pipe bomb that only partially detonated. Retired NYPD Chief of Detectives Robert Boyce says it could have been a catastrophe.
You had a 9-volt battery, you had wires, you had explosive powder, you had shrapnel. You had all these things that go into the making of one of these bombs. We were fortunate that he didn't construct it properly.
So the judge imposed the maximum, which in this case is 3 life sentences, plus an additional 30 years in prison. Of course, it's all academic. He will spend the rest of his life in prison. Late this afternoon, the interim president of the New York City Transit Authority, Sarah Feinberg, released a statement praising the investigation, the prosecution, and the conviction. Live tonight.
Hate spray painted on a Minnesota mosque. Police and federal authorities are investigating in Moorhead, Minnesota.
Minnesota's chapter for the Council on American Islamic Relations is calling on authorities to label the mosque graffiti as a hate crime.
An Islamic advocacy group says the Muslim community in the Fargo-Moorhead area is offering forgiveness to a man accused of vandalizing a mosque last month.
Regret what I did. This is the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life.
We are human beings. We all make mistakes, and we have to be able to forgive each other. Love and our faith teaches us to forgive each other and forgive others, and that's what we want to display in this moment. So if we're seeking forgiveness from God, then it's best for us to also forgive, actually provide good forgiveness to those who need it from us as well.
But by the end of July, CARE shows that they haven't forgiven anything.
Now, the Center for American Islamic Relations says they're now calling for the FBI to look into Enderle's background and ties, as they claim Enderle was affiliated with a hate group. In a statement, the group said, quote, Enderle was allegedly working with accomplices in a hate group who possess an arsenal of weapons. We urge the FBI to investigate potential threats these individuals may pose to the local Muslim community.
Minnesota man is now the second member of the Boogaloo Boys, a far-right extremist group, to plead guilty to federal terrorism charges. 31-year-old Michael Solomon of New Brighton pleaded guilty to conspiracy to provide material support and weapons to a terrorist group. The FBI started investigating Solomon and 22-year-old Benjamin Teeter of North Carolina after they both appeared at a George Floyd protest in Minneapolis carrying guns and discussing violence against police. The men met an informant they believe to be a member of Hamas, which the U.S. designates as a terrorist organization. The informant was actually an undercover agent, and investigators say the pair had planned to provide Hamas weapons in exchange for funding the Boogaloo Boys. Teeter pleaded guilty to conspiracy to provide material support for Hamas. He has yet to be sentenced. The U.S. Attorney's Office says Solomon faces up to 20 years in prison when sentenced. Katie Johnston for CBSN, Minnesota.
We're learning new details about a disturbing attack on a North Penn high school student. The 16-year-old says this brawl, caught on camera, was not the first time she was targeted because of her religion.
A fight between Buford and two other girls at the school that was captured on video and posted online. Buford claims during the brawl, her hijab, her religious head covering, was purposely torn off by one of the students. Adding insult to injury, it occurred during the holy month of Ramadan.
A hijab to a Muslima is probably the most sacred and most powerful thing that we have on our body.
Community leaders are protesting charges against a Montgomery County high school student involved in a school fight.
Rallying against what they see as unjust impending criminal charges against Sanaa. That all three of the girls were found responsible for the fight and all were charged with mutual combat assault. The totality of the Towamencin Police Department's investigation and found no evidence that racial or religious bias motivated this fight.
We're learning new details tonight about an attempted stabbing at a local mosque that prompted calls for stepped-up security. Fairfax County Police confirm an arrest in this case. They tell us that Jonathan Lincoln is now charged with assault and disorderly conduct. They say he tried to stab a security guard here at the Islamic Center in Falls Church. He then allegedly pointed the knife at several other people during the incident yesterday. No one was hurt, and we don't have a motive in this case. The Council on American Islamic Relations is urging all mosques in the region to be on high alert.
A Dearborn native accused of fighting for ISIS, the story making headlines around the world.
The government reportedly plans to bring that man back to the United States for prosecution. 7 Action News reporter Kimberly Craig talked to the suspect's relatives. And Kim, good evening to you. What are they saying?
Yes, Glenda and Dave, they say Ibrahim Musabli is innocent. Some of his relatives live here in this Dearborn neighborhood, and his brother says he was tricked by terrorists.
My brother was tricked into going to Syria to learn more about Islam and work there. However, the so-called Muslim friends that invited him there turned out to be terrorists. When my brother found out, he tried everything to escape, but I heard they took his U.S. passport.
Abe Musabli and his brother Ibrahim grew up in this neighborhood in Dearborn, but now Ibrahim, a former student at Edsel Ford High School, was recently captured in northern Syria, accused of fighting for ISIS.
He had no idea they were ISIS or whatever, he had no idea.
Abe says his 28-year-old brother went to Yemen with his wife and son a few years ago, but he says when Ibrahim went to Syria to find work and learn more about Islam, he was tricked by a friend who was actually a terrorist. The New York Times broke the story of Ibrahim Musabli's arrest. Their sources saying the Dearborn native became disillusioned with the militants and wanted out, but negotiations with U.S. officials to turn himself in broke down. Andy Arena headed up the FBI here in Detroit.
I want to see how this played out. Was he radicalized here? Was he radicalized in Yemen, where he spent a couple of years? So it's going to be interesting to see where he was radicalized, how he was radicalized. Was it on the internet? Was it social media? Was it one of the language schools in Sana'a? So a lot of information we don't know right now.
My brother would never harm anyone, and he is a very trusting person. That is why I am asking that the FBI or whoever is leading this investigation to not question him without an attorney present, because this is still America and he has rights.
And Ibrahim Musabli is now in a holding facility, and he's reportedly been indicted in court proceedings that remain sealed. Reporting live in Dearborn, Kimberly Craig, 7 Action News.
All right, Kim, thank you. And a bombshell new developments surrounding this man. It is our very first look at the Dearborn man accused of fighting for ISIS.
And that's not the only thing we've just uncovered. Unsealed court documents, social media pages, and more. It's our top story tonight.
Good evening and thank you for joining us tonight. That Dearborn native is now facing charges, accused of helping support the terror group.
The man was arrested in Syria and could appear in federal court as early as tomorrow. Investigator Simon Shaquette live in Dearborn tonight, where a community leader is speaking out. Simon?
Dave, Glenda, we've learned that this investigation dates back to 2015, and here on the streets of Dearborn, many questions about what exactly happened. This high school photo of Ibrahim Musabli, now 28 years old, shows a young student just starting his life. Federal prosecutors say he was recently picked up by Syrian coalition forces for allegedly providing material support to ISIS.
This is a very rare incident in Dearborn.
Arab American News publisher Osama Siblani sharing his reaction to this troubling news. Siblani says he hopes more information is made public surrounding the charges, which contradict the suspect's family claiming he was only working and studying religion.
What has happened? How did he get involved? We don't know. We just don't know. We know that he's been charged. There are part of the documents are unsealed.
Feds have also been looking closely at this Facebook page using an alias out of Yemen, where Musabli allegedly talked about fighting and dying and also described martyrdom. The high-profile charges leveled against the Edsel Ford High School dropout, who's married with a son, have only recently been unsealed. They suggest Musabli's actions directly endangered American lives.
I'm not going to sit here and make an excuse for someone who did this. I think we have court, system that the justice system is fair.
Now, Musabli could be in court as early as tomorrow morning. This is, of course, very unusual given the fact that he is an American citizen. Dave?
Oh, Simon, his brother spoke with our Kim Craig last week. Has he said anything more tonight about this?
Yeah, he was quite adamant about the fact that his brother was over there studying religion and talked at length with Kim just a few days back. But now we reached out to him again, and he has not responded this time, so we're still waiting to hear back.
We'll see what plays out in federal court tomorrow. Simon, thank you very much.
In Brooklyn, hateful prejudice reared its head. Vandalism at a mosque with a vile slogan written on the front.
Hate crimes in New York are up 71%, driven largely by anti-Asian bias crimes, which are up a staggering 376%. Anti-black crimes are up 70%, but anti-Semitic crimes are down 7%. And anti-Muslim crimes are unchanged.
This is the first anti-Muslim hate crime so far this year. Let's hope it's the last.
New perspective on the incident where multiple demonstrators were pepper sprayed at a pro-Palestine rally in Fresno. The suspect in the case, Brian Turner, faces felony charges for allegedly using pepper spray on demonstrators. And tonight, we're learning he's now facing a hate crime enhancement.
According to Rob Beckwith of the Fresno police, the subjects in the victim's vehicle actually initiated the contact with the suspect. One of the subjects in the vehicle exited the victim's vehicle and began approaching the suspect's vehicle in somewhat of an aggressive manner. As that was occurring, the suspect, Mr. Turner, produced pepper spray and discharged the pepper spray at that subject, Beckwith said. When the alleged victims retreated back to their vehicles, Turner sprayed them again. While the first spraying could be self-defense, the second time would not be.
When the alleged victims are being represented by the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CARE. The organization is pushing to have hate crime charges officially filed against Brian Turner.
CARE includes 2 separate incidents about Ilhan Omar on the same day in their report.
Developing tonight, calls for an assault outside of a Northern Virginia elementary school to be investigated as a possible hate crime.
A woman came up to her and another woman who were wearing hijab, started yelling, pushing, and spitting at them. Deputies have identified the alleged attacker and say she was referred for a mental health evaluation. She is also a parent of a student here.
By the time I spoke to this victim, she was still really shaking and did not understand why it happened. The 2 Muslim women were visibly wearing Islamic traditional clothing, hijab, and the alleged attacker held a cross and was just showering them with insults. And so you can see that there was a religious tone there.
In the Middle East, if it does hold true, there are meantime reports of anti-Semitic hate crimes on the rise here in the U.S. Tonight, police are investigating a report of a disturbing anti-Semitic incident that occurred near a synagogue in South Florida. Our Lexi Nall's been looking into that. She has the exclusive details tonight.
They say it happened here in Bal Harbor, north of Miami, just before the sun went down. A man on vacation with his family walking down the street after attending services at this synagogue. That's when he said a group of men driving by began shouting and cursing at them.
Just started screaming some derogatory things towards Jewish people out the window. It was free Palestine, then die Jew, F you Jew, I'm going to rape your wife, I'm going to rape your daughter.
Eric Organ was taken completely by surprise when 4 men in an SUV began shouting at his family, even throwing garbage at his 16-year-old daughter.
My first thought was just making sure that my wife and my daughter were moved behind me so, I could take the brunt of anything that was going to happen.
That's when Organ says an armed stranger intervened.
The guy in the car that was behind them who saw everything was going on, all we saw is him pull a gun and get in between. So he was almost there as our guardian angel, protecting us just to see what would happen. And I think once they saw him, that's really when they took off.
Bal Harbor police are now investigating, but the reality is this incident is just one of many in the area. According to the Anti-Defamation League, anti-Semitic incidents in Florida were up 40% in 2020 compared to the year before. And in the wake of the Middle Eastern conflict, there's been another uptick in anti-Jewish hate that the ADL's regional director is calling, quote, more dangerous and violent than ever. Just last week at a pro-Israel demonstration in Boca Raton, a van covered in anti-Semitic graffiti drove through the crowd, shouting racist slurs before police chased them off.
We have seen Jewish institutions vandalized, and we have seen many protests with messaging that are clearly anti-Semitic in nature. So we are concerned, and we're calling on all leaders to step up and condemn the anti-Semitism.
Here in Bal Harbor, the mayor has a strong message to anyone who tries to spread anti-Jewish hate in his city.
The purpose of these attacks is clear. The purpose of the attacks is to try to put fear into the Jewish community's hearts. And to the perpetrators of this attack, they must know that they're going to fail, like they failed in the past. We're a strong community and we're a proud community, and we stand strong with the state of Israel and with everything that's happening in Israel, and that no amount of attacks or intimidation tactics are going to work.
For now, many synagogues like the shul have hired their own security. They even came up to our crew to ask why we were taking pictures when we were working on this story. Local law enforcement is the first line of defense in combating these incidents across the country. There are also federal resources available. But despite all the work the ADL and others are doing to expose this anti-Semitic hate, they tell us their biggest fear is they'll never be able to stomp it out completely. Reporting in Bal Harbor, I'm Lexi Nall, CBS 12 News.
$2,000 reward being offered tonight to the vandals who damaged that mosque in Brentwood on Long Island.
The burning of a flag outside the mosque.
This is not a normal flag. When somebody touches it, everybody touches it with love and respect.
So we can't imagine somebody coming and burning it when we are spreading the message of love.
It is actually the fourth time the mosque has been targeted, although the last time was back in 2016. And police tell us Suffolk County hasn't seen any mosques vandalized in the last 3 years.
A threatening email was sent to the Islamic Center of Charlotte in North Carolina from the son of Satan. However, the FBI is reported as saying the letter doesn't rise to the level of threat that the FBI could charge or arrest someone.
An update tonight in 2 vandalism cases in Brooklyn. A 29-year-old suspect now arrested in connection to both. Police say Ali Alaheri is responsible for torching a synagogue at a Jewish school in Borough Park on Wednesday and then attacking a man wearing traditional Hasidic garb. Investigators say Alaheri is the same suspect who knocked down a large crucifix outside a church in Bensonhurst and then burned an American flag outside the rectory a week earlier. Alaheri faces federal arson charges as well as criminal mischief as a hate crime.
Now to the story of an Uber driver being harassed by his passenger, a Cincinnati man now charged with ethnic intimidation for telling the driver that he hopes he gets shot and then calls him the N-word.
Yeah, Chris, the Council for American Islamic Relations, also known as CARE, says the assault happened here at the intersection of Glen Parker and Hamilton on May 28th. Ahmad says he didn't know where he was, but Winterman didn't believe him.
If you don't go and tell me, guess what? I'm not getting out of your car.
Winterman stayed in the car for about 3 more minutes before eventually getting out of the vehicle with some racially charged words.
I hope the hell you get shot.
Uber drivers continue to experience racist attacks, and yet nothing has been implemented. And we are calling on Uber to make these changes that ensure that when these things happen, their drivers are protected.
A hate crime investigation underway after a Nassau teen was attacked at a Suffolk mall. The 8th grader speaking out tonight.
13-year-old Chaz Betty from Syosset says he's traumatized after being randomly attacked by a group of older teens on Saturday at the Walt Whitman shops in South Huntington. And he says he was singled out because of his appearance.
You shouldn't be targeted for anything that is different about you than everyone else.
no one should be targeted for any reason at all.
Chaz says he was punched in the face while the attackers said racial slurs and also called him Mohammed. According to Suffolk Police, the incident is being investigated as a hate crime. No arrests have been made so far, but if you know anything about this attack, you're asked to call their Crime Stoppers hotline.
A religious discrimination complaint's been filed against Southwest Airlines. This is after a Palestinian-American Muslim woman says that a flight attendant on board made her move out of the exit row because she was wearing a hijab.
I think they need to retrain their employees. I really do.
Training is not the problem. Racism is the problem. And the racism that this flight attendant showed is completely unacceptable.
Court documents show that 20-year-old Elvin Williams was a man in training, preparing himself to fight for ISIS.
The evidence that we collected in this investigation, we are confident that that's what his intent was to go join ISIS. Yes.
Williams was arrested Friday at SeaTac Airport. Investigators say he was moments away from boarding a flight to Egypt by way of Amsterdam. A plan to join and fight for ISIS he'd been plotting with men he didn't know were FBI sources.
Just buying the plane ticket wasn't enough. We wanted to be able to see him show up at the airport, cross over, where he was actually in the jetway boarding the plane when he was arrested. So he could never say, I changed my mind, or I was not going forward with my intent of fighting overseas.
FBI agents first tipped off to Williams in 2017, again in 2020, when leaders of a Seattle mosque contacted federal agents concerned over growing radical behavior. Messages released by the FBI show Williams trying to convince an FBI informant to drive a semi-truck through Seattle's Gay Pride Parade. And then this picture taken in November of 2020, where Williams is seen pledging his allegiance to ISIS. A plan that stopped Friday at SeaTac when Williams was arrested. If convicted, he faces up to 20 years in prison. In Seattle, Sebastian Robertson, King 5 News.
A Palestinian American community center is bombarded with threats.
Stop calling this number, please.
Yeah, you're a terrorist. There's blood on your hands. I'm a Jew. That's all you need to know, and that's all who am I speaking to? You guys aren't even a real country.
So we're hoping that politicians come out unequivocally and condemn the anti-Palestinian hate that seems to have gripped the nation.
If you want to stop the Palestinian hate, then stop telling lies about Israel committing genocide.
And the fact that our tax dollars are being used to help fund this oppression and this illegal occupation and this genocide of sorts.
Kind of terrifying. I don't know what to think.
After 13 years of searching the globe, the FBI captured Yasser Saeed just 30 miles from where he allegedly killed his 17 and 18-year-old daughters, Sarah and Amina.
Someone living in here that close to you is kind of scary.
Gary Burton saw Saeed, but never knew his neighbor in Justin had been on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list since 2014, until FBI SWAT arrested Saeed Wednesday.
Throughout the night, I was just very emotional.
Ruth Trotter's son dated Amina for 4 years before her death.
Him being at large, 1 year, 2 years, a decade, it was difficult.
On New Year's Day 2008, detectives say Saeed drove the girls in a cab to the Omni Hotel in Irving and shot them multiple times. Police believe he was angry they were dating non-Muslim boys. Sarah was able to call 911 and name her father as her killer before she died.
What's going on, ma'am?
I'm dying, that's what's up.
The FBI chased thousands of tips, and an agent even postponed retirement. They arrested Saeed's son Islam and his brother Yassim in Euless for harboring him. Officials say they're still investigating who else helped him stay on the run.
Amina and Sarah are finally going to have justice.
In Justin, I'm William Joy.
Not another Ilhan Omar incident. How many is that now? 4?
And bullied over her graduation speech. The student, who is Muslim from the Wheatley School in Nassau County, urged fellow students to educate themselves about world issues, and she specifically mentioned the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians and Muslims. Well, that led to jeers from the crowd and for her family to be bullied.
Educate yourself about international dilemmas, including the ethnic cleansings of Palestinians and Uyghur Muslims. Families are continuously torn apart, and real human lives are being lost but ignored. Our graduation ceremony had ended. My parents hadn't even reached me yet, but there were like grown adult men coming toward me, telling me my speech was a bunch of profanities, and thankfully there were people there to hold them back. Also, boos and chants of we support Israel. And also there was a comment at me to go back to Pakistan. Ignored everything that happened to me and the reaction that was extremely unprecedented from the parents, and instead went and apologized to them without acknowledging that behavior.
When absolutely nothing happened to her. And if anything, the Jewish students and families who were targeted at that event, and she was able to get away with that, we are the victims of this these lies that have real consequences.
Correctional officers allegedly threw away an inmate's belongings, including legal documents, clothes, and a Koran. Unfortunately, there's no way of knowing whether this actually even happened.
A bizarre crime investigation tonight in Las Vegas with bacon as the weapon. A Muslim family says a neighbor smeared raw bacon on their home, and now he's been arrested.
Man with a strip of raw bacon, rubbing it all over their home.
The staircase, the railing, the door frame, everywhere. And it was so unfortunate because when my kids came home earlier, they had touched those places in order to enter. And we don't necessarily, bacon isn't our kryptonite. However, if anybody rubs meat on your surface and walls, then it would be uncomfortable.
Police identify him as Ricky Uwish, and he now faces charges of harassment, stalking, and being a nuisance. The family says he lives downstairs and claims he's called them names and caused problems before. This one was pretty blatant.
Now, Commissioner Kendrick Kenyon pressed trouble on his writings this afternoon, specifically his criticism of COVID measures like mask mandates and the closure of things like churches, as well as race and politics. Here's some of what Trouble had to say.
Everyone has their personal politics and preferences. My difference is I wear it on my sleeve as I have in the book.
And would you as a sheriff?
No, and that's the difference, because my preferences, my oath trumps my preferences. My professionalism trumps any preferences I have. I've never shortchanged anybody. I've never treated anybody different, and I'm proud of that. And it's been reflected over and over and over again.
So what you write is, you're saying, is different than how you act in day-to-day business.
Absolutely, and I would say the same thing of judges and prosecutors and defense attorneys.
Dave Rochelle, Bakersfield police say 33-year-old Adrian Vasquez Aceves was arrested yesterday for threatening employees at a local restaurant, all because of their race. Wednesday afternoon, a man pulled out a knife at a local fast food restaurant, targeting its employees. 33-year-old Adrian Vasquez Aceves went up to several employees at the restaurant, asking about their nationalities and religions. Bakersfield police say, although hate crimes are not reported often, it's something the department does not take lightly.
Our hate crime statistics are extremely low.
That doctor wants to know how someone got her cell phone number and called her from a United number saying she was on that list.
It violates every level of professionalism, but it's also a violation of this woman's privacy and her civil rights.
She's scared for her family's safety.
I don't know how to protect my family from somebody who seems clearly unhinged. So what do I do?
She says the trouble began with a flight attendant after she changed her daughter's diaper in the lavatory.
And he said, did you just leave a diaper in the back of the plane? You can't do that. It's a biohazard.
So Khan says, humiliated, she fished the diaper out of the trash, but was later told by a crew member that's where the diaper needed to be disposed of.
It was a diaper. Baby's poop. I just...
says they have foiled this kidnapping plot by the Iranian government targeting a journalist in Brooklyn. The journalist is a sharp, outspoken critic of Iran. She says she has been under U.S. government protection for months. Eyewitness News reporter Candace McCowan is live on the east side this morning. Candace, good morning.
Michelle, we are live in front of the Iranian mission to the UN. This is like something out of a movie. This plot all revealed in an unsealed indictment by prosecutors, U.S. prosecutors, actually in Lower Manhattan overnight. Now, the FBI and U.S. attorney releasing these pictures of the men who are wanted in the plot against the Brooklyn-based journalist. The suspects are an Iranian intelligence officer and 3 alleged members of an Iranian intelligence network. We know that a 5th man was arrested in California. Writer and activist Masih Alinejad confirmed that she was the targeted victim of the plan. In a Twitter video, she showed the police stationed outside of her home in Brooklyn. Alinejad has been critical of Iran, writing about its human rights abuses. The journalist saying that the FBI informed her of the plot several months ago, even saying that the suspects tried to get a family member to lure her out of the country where she could then be kidnapped. In another case, the indictment saying that part of the plot included pictures of a nautical map from New York to Venezuela using speedboats.
They showed me all the photos that the intelligence service actually sent someone here to take photos of my private life. And then I was like, wow, are they that close to me? I knew that this is the nature of the Islamic Republic.
Yeah, and Alinejad even saying that there was pictures of her backyard, of her garden, and these plots that were uncovered by investigators. Prosecutors saying that the suspect's larger plot included kidnapping 3 people in Canada and another in the United Kingdom.
We also want federal law enforcement. We're pushing for federal law enforcement to aggressively prosecute unlawful acts of anti-Muslim hate crimes when law enforcement fails to act. Pushing for this special envoy to combat Islamophobia. Forces there that are trying to discredit Islamophobia as a form of racism. Everything we can to ensure that this form of racism doesn't get swept under the bus.
And yes, government pressure via a special envoy. So,
and we also hope to follow up with an actual legislation to give this some teeth.
Exactly.
Ilhan Omar and CARE cannot solve certain problems in the world because their solutions involve getting authority to physically hurt you and your family. You have been warned, not by me, but directly from the Council on American Islamic Relations.
Exactly.